Fuck it. What up, nation? Welcome to another edition of the WiseTake MLB DFS Wise stream. A very special edition of the MLB Wise stream. We're joined by a very special guest. Special guest of the First Look show, but obviously part of the furniture at WiseTake.com. He is known as the GOAT, the true OG of the WiseTake Nation, Paulie D. You can find him on Twitter at Paulie with 8 Ds. You also, if you're in the donkey, you may want to look up, because you might find my man, Paulie 8 Ds, swinging on ya. Paulie, what's happening, bro?
That's true. What's happening, bro? It's good to be on. Feels like a long time since I've been on one of these. And, you know, I'm happier than shit because I finally dropped a big bizzle. Won the donkey for the first time. And life is cool when you do that.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely, man. I could, there's like literally not another person on the planet besides myself, obviously. And like, listen, when our members win, we're extremely happy for them, and it's like, you know, but there was nothing like seeing you finally get that, man. Because I mean, we've been doing this for years now, and I can't tell you how many times you just needed one thing to go your way, just one thing, and you just don't get that bounce, right? Like, don't get me wrong, you get good nights, but like you and I kind of expect to have those decent nights to win 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. We kind of expect to have those every once in a while, but to fall short of like the big one, like so many times, and it's just luck not going your way. For it to finally fucking come down, man. Especially for you, Paulie, because you I know you take a lot of chances, literally just taking the best pitcher on the slate that you know is gonna be popular and saying, "Fuck it, I'm going after him." You know what I mean? Like so many times, and like I know there's been people that see that and they're like, "Why does he keep doing that?" This is why he fucking does it. This is why you fucking do it, because eventually you get that big one. For anyone who doesn't know, what day was it, Paulie? I know it was a day slate. What day was it?
It was July 1st.
July 1st.
Yeah.
Our boy, the OG Paulie D, took down first place, not only in a higher stakes $300 entry contest that got him $15,000, but he took first in the actual donkey, which was what, $18 I think to get in. What was it? 20 up top.
20 up top, yeah, 35,000.
And the way that he did it, I'm gonna let Paulie talk on it for a minute, but the way that he did it by stacking against a pitcher that was 60% owned in the donkey. That's how he did it. And we talk about the leverage thing. I know there's some people that say they don't understand, like leverage doesn't exist. Regardless of what the actual technical term is, you know what the fuck we mean. And this is what the fuck we mean. This is the fucking result that we're looking for. No doubt. So before we get into our slate breakdown, the show will be a little bit longer, obviously. Go ahead, Paulie, and I want you to tell the nation kind of like your actual lineup, the one that actually took it down. And you only built 2 lineups for that slate. I want to be clear about that. Only 2 lineups for that slate.
Yep. 2 bullets.
2 bullets. So I want you to tell the nation. That's what they say. But you know what? You know what I say? They don't get paid to talk. You know what I'm saying? They don't get paid to talk. They don't get paid to think. So my mom used to tell me, like, I think it's under here. You don't get paid to think. She used to tell me that. But go ahead and tell the nation kind of what you were thinking when you were building the actual team.
Yeah, and like, you know, what you were saying in the intro, like, you know, we've taken down tons of contests, but never the donkey, which is like the large field with 50 or 100K up top. This happened to be a day slate, so it was only 20, but still it's a large field. Neither of us, I think, have ever taken one of those down besides maybe like under a 10,000 man in basketball and like a 10-figure finish. You had one in football and a higher dollar contest, but like to do that, you know, many people say you got to build 150 lineups, and certainly have better odds to do so by doing that. But, you know, after 4 or 5 years of doing this, I kind of had like changed my stance on that a little bit and thought that it could be done, especially in baseball where you can get such leverage, and really in all of DFS sports now. Like we're like having this change where like the chalk is chalkier than ever. Like we never had like 2-3 years ago in basketball, baseball, where like pitchers are 70% owned, 80-90% owned, and like leveraging or fading that, going against it, really like when it hits, you can win a tournament. You don't need all those lineups. And it was kind of like a relief, you know, like it felt like a payoff of many years of grinding at this, that like, you know, over 5-figure win. But, you know, now we're just going to chase down some more. And funny thing is, I actually won an MMA contest for 10 grand like 2 weeks ago, and I barely even play that sport, but I did win a donkey in that too. So maybe like this is just gonna be a new trend we're just gonna start doing here at the
I
nation.
I I,
Just take it down
I think so,
contests.
man. I think we're gonna have to like, what do you call it? Copyright or register the name Donkey Slayers, some shit like that. Maybe we'll just throw it on some t-shirts and call it a night. But that tends to happen though, honestly, a lot of times, and I think we're about, I'm hoping to experience that alongside you, Paulie. But a lot of times when people finally get that breakthrough, and they have that true cushion, where you don't just win money that they get. Everybody that wins any kind of chunk of change, they got to take most of that out. They got bills to pay.
Yeah.
They got shit they got to do. They got to justify what they're doing to their families, so they got to take a chunk out, right? Very, very few people that actually win that thing get to just kind of keep a good, healthy portion and just play. You know what I mean? But like you and I were talking, we've obviously preached MME for the longest time, and I still believe MME for the casual person, because I think that's the best way to manage your bankroll, especially for new people who can't make those critical thinking decisions for higher stakes play. But if you can afford to get in these higher stakes, one of the things you were just saying to me before the show is you've noticed the payout structures. They're more favorable for those who pay up a little bit and carry those. They're catering to
like
them.
The contests are like, they pay larger fields, the rake is less, and it's interesting. So like I believe in the MME too, but like my life wasn't allowing me to put in enough time for it. And like I was finding myself like not getting the lineups in time and wasting a whole 150 lineups, like not being able to put, like, you really, like, to take advantage of MME, you got to be like adjusting with the slate till the very end. And like, this new business that I'm running just took too much of my time. So I'd like reverted back to playing in the higher dollar, smaller fields, but I was always throwing the donkeys on top too, just in case, and like, I think you got to have that mix. You got to have a little bit of both. And if you got enough time, some MME, some large field, if you got enough bankroll, that I think is the optimal approach to try to attack both ends. But in terms of the day, the lineup, like one thing that nobody really knows is like 15 minutes before lock, like maybe 2 weeks ago, I lost the phone. So I borrowed my dad's for the day, and I downloaded DraftKings, and I used it, and I, gave it back to him the next day when my new one came. But I never turned off like the notifications. So my dad's been like, whining about, I keep getting these fucking notifications, But that day he got one that the Yankees game was canceled, and I honestly had Yankees in my lineup earlier, and I probably would have missed it. Like, I've missed it a lot lately because I just get busy at work. And he, I work with my dad. We started a business together, and he was like, "Hey, look, the Yanks game's canceled." And I was like, "Oh shit!" And I changed my lineup and went with the Red Sox. I was always going with the Rangers because the Oakland A's pitcher Manaea was going to be chalky. I didn't know he was going to be that popular, and I just don't think he's that good. I think the Rangers have some like great for GPP type hitters like Joey Gallo, Adalis Garcia, Nate Lau, and it was like a 5-game slate that turned into 4. Boston Red Sox backs with a chalk. I had that. It's fine to play that, but if you do, you gotta, play some not so popular shit to pair along with it. And the other 2 games really didn't do very much, and it came down to that last game, and the whole field having Sean Manaea and the Rangers just beating them up. I mean, they didn't even tattoo him, but the guys that I had did most of the damage, hit home runs, and Manaea had a terrible outing, and Nate Lau double donged in his last one. Set me into first, and like there was nothing else left. Like that was the last game on the slate, and it was like I was nervous. I was hoping nothing went wrong, but like I was like, I don't think I'm gonna lose, which is rare, So like, we that kind of hit the nuts or whatever that is. It was just a great feeling, and I hope to do so.
Where I felt it was real, right? So over the years, Paulie, you and I have sent texts to each other with the early sweats. Like we only send it to each other. Always. We only do it to each other because we know other people. We know you're not supposed to sweat early, but people send a text to each other. Yo, sweating. I get the drip, the drip, baby drip. You know what I mean? Like that's one of my favorite ones I get. But on this one, your demeanor was a little bit different when you sent me that text. It was just a little bit different. Like you were almost. It was almost like. When you wouldn't say for sure, like I was like, "How you looking?" And this is the last game, and there's like only a couple innings left in this game, and I'm like, "What do you think? Are you gonna hold?" And a normal Paulie D would be like, yeah, man, oh fucking hell yeah, I'm gonna fucking hold like all day. Instead, you were like, I don't know, and that made me look. I was like, Paulie's saying he don't know. I think he's feeling like he might actually take this bitch down, and he doesn't know what to do. Like, I think that's like I can't think straight right now, bro. I don't know what to tell you. You know what I mean? And so I went back and I looked and I was like, there's no way. Like, there's nobody here. Like, anybody that had anybody else left, you already had that player. It was just no end.
Yeah.
So I at that point I knew. I was like, shit, he's gonna do it. He's gonna do it then. He done did it big then. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It was great. It was great. And I always said I was gonna do it in baseball. I think that's like the sport that rewards being contrarian the most. You know, and it's. I don't know. I feel like the field is the weakest in baseball.
Yeah.
Like, it's just the most varied sport. And I think that's ultimately when you're a player that's of a contrarian approach is what you're looking for.
You know, not for nothing. And we may even have some members who are newer to DFS and don't fully understand like the whole stacking thing all the way. But to me, it really boggles my mind how many people out there actually really do just do a whole bunch of one-offs and that's it. They just like, which in baseball, man, a sport with so much variance, that's terrifying. You know, like bet a 9-game parlay and tell me how many times that wins for you. You know what I mean? So to me, it just seems like, and as long as that exists, you see it on Twitter, people posting their lineups, and it's just a bunch of one-offs or a 2-2-2-2-2. It's like it makes you feel good about DFS. It makes you feel like, no, man, there's still plenty of edge there. There's still plenty of room there. And to your point, baseball, you can argue, is one of the best sports to MME because of all the variance and having more lineups is better. But you could also argue it's one of the sports where you don't need it as much because there is that big edge. So you can really make those decisions and have them go a lot further, right? Like in basketball, I feel like it's a little harder. You can still do what you do, but it's a little tougher. You really got to be thinking, like really critically. Whereas if it's MME, you plug the numbers in, okay, late swap, whatever. Give me what I got and see what sticks, right?
Yep.
But I agree with you. I think baseball, as much as it's a sport that's it's great for MME, and I feel like something about football. I like having the control over the team. I like having the exact control and make the exact movements. This guy's not in the lineup. Let me see what that does. Like, so I'm with you, bro. Like, obviously since I've had my daughter born, I haven't had as much time to play the MME game either. So I've been building hand-built teams too. And again, I still believe in MME. If I have the time, I think like Paulie said, I think the optimal approach is to be able to do both. But you got to have bankroll. But I agree, man. There's something about it, and I think baseball is really the best sport for anyone because there's so much luck involved, also, right? Like it's so. I agree with you. I think it's the best. Anybody that's new out there, I can't believe how many people play basketball, football, fall in love with DFS, but they don't want to play baseball. And it's like this is the sport. This is the one sport where you actually have a chance, bro. Like, and you can't even really explain it to them, like all the way. It's hard to. I just can't get into it. I'm just saying. You want to make it, so I guess you find out the people that are here to make money, or the people that are just looking to have a good time, and that's fine. And there's nothing wrong with that at all, not at all. But I guess that would be the answer to that question. That being said, shout out to those of you in the chat. Lionel, yeah, I agree. Feels like old times, man. For anyone who doesn't know, those of you that recently discovered us, man. Me and Paulie were grinding these shits every single day, twice a day for years now, man. So. Trying to make the business run a little more optimally, allowing us to rather than put out 20 pieces of content and kind of half-assing all of them because we're all stretched out. We're trying to really just focus in and give you just a couple pieces of really solid shit that could actually help you for the day. So that's kind of the route we went. But you will see Paulie. You'll see Paulie around, especially for football. I'm sure you'll see Patio Joe, Paulie, myself doing dirties with the NFL and all that. That being said, it's coming. It's coming. So shout out to Lionel, shout out to Pat Bush, man. You've been grinding with us. Good to see you. MG, OG MG. I don't see you here at the live shows very often, man. He's been very busy. Also, we even got married and doing the grind. Life is life. Man. Life is life, man. Life goes on. That being said, let's go ahead and let's do a little bit of slate break action, man. So I know Paulie told me he does watch the show, so he kind of knows the format. So let's get dirty with it and just go right into top pitchers on our first look.
I mean, this is my first look of the day pretty much every day whenever I can, and it's helpful, you know? So, pitcher-wise, you got the Grominator out there. Even making 3 teams, if he's on a slate, it's hard for me not to have him on at least one. I have no clue what else this slate has to have, but against a high strikeout team like Milwaukee at home, Pitchers Park, uh, you want to get some DeGrom if slate allows. If there's some cheap shit we can pair up with it, he's the best pitcher in baseball. It's such a large gap between him and whoever you think the second best guy is, and he's just capable of putting up a real crooked number here. As you kind of slide through like some of these higher end names, Aaron Nola, depending on what the weather's like, and maybe even not, to me of late, he's had like the second best strikeout stuff in baseball. Like he had like a start against, I think it was the Mets, where he struck out like the first 10 guys, or correct me if I'm wrong, but he's posted 3 out of his last 4 starts. He's had 9, 11, and 12
He
strikeouts.
freaking tied Tom Seaver's record and had like 12 straight Ks or some shit.
That's what it was.
12 straight.
Yes. And the Cubs, even in like the best fucking hitting conditions, can only muster together 2 runs so far through 8 innings against like some of the worst pitchers in baseball. Their offense is like putrid right now. They're high against both sides of the plate with strikeouts, like they're striking out the lefties and righties. They're not putting up runs. They're just not doing much, and it's weird because they really have a solid lineup. But collectively, they're just all in funks, and even like a day like today, where they should have went off, they didn't. I think Aaron Nola is interesting, and if the wind is blown out, nobody's going to use him, so that makes him even more interesting to me. I do really respect what Rodon's been doing, but this just feels like too tough of a situation. Even if Minnesota's injured, like their lineup today looked pretty bad, and I threw Cisse in like one lineup, and I regretted it pretty quickly. And I do think Rodon is elite and capable of striking out dudes, but Minnesota doesn't really strike out. And if they do have like the watered down lineup, that's less of a strikeout lineup. And they just seem to be like putting up runs right now, even without the power. And that power is going to come because, when healthy, that's a really good lineup. So I don't think I end up on Rodon just because I like Nola, I like DeGrom. Just minimal to no interest in Bassett against the Astros. I do have interest in Framber against Oakland. I think this kid's got some pretty legit stuff. And the jury's out for me on what Oakland is. They sometimes can just really do absolutely nothing. When you kind of look at their lineup, there's no one that you're like hyper scared of except for maybe Matt Olson. And I think Framber is capable of putting up a good outing here. I think you'll see this kind of like a lower scoring game, so he could be interesting. Never paying 9-2 for Merrill Kelly, even though it's against Colorado. Man, there's so many arms on it, but you want me to like cut it off here at like 9K, or do you want me to just go through the whole bitch?
Yeah, man, I'll just build on a couple of things that you said here. So, we'll start with Oakland. Not really, like, what are they? I completely agree, right?
Yeah.
They have a 100 WRC plus against lefties, a 162 ISO, a 310 WOBA, a 23.2% K rate. So they don't strike out over the top where it's super exciting, but they don't have a ton of power where you're scared. The WOBA is not great. The WRC literally average against lefties. As I agree, and I think that going back to DeGrom, yeah, you're gonna want pieces of DeGrom, right? But on slates that are so big like this, there's other pitchers who have the potential to give us a score that we're really looking for from DeGrom. If you can get it from a Framber, you can get it from a Nola at significantly lower ownership, then it's a way to save some money, get a little different, get yourself a different build. So I love the way you're thinking on that. And going back to the Rodon, he's been awesome this year, and I got on it a little late, but I agree with you also on this one with Minnesota. 22.9% K rate against lefties, a 192 ISO, a 330 WOBA, and the 5th highest WRC plus against lefties. So I agree with you. It's just not a situation where I'm dying to jump in head first. One other guy, I'm going to ask you about this dude, and then I'm going to kick it back to you to go ahead and talk about the rest. But I think for tournament purposes only, obviously. I think Jose Berrios is kind of interesting. And that's mainly because that same day, Paulie, that you had those takedowns, the White Sox did beat up Berrios, and that was in Chicago. We know, obviously, a much smaller park out there in Chicago. And then we know that Berrios has always been a guy that pitches better at home. So I think just from an ownership standpoint, I don't think anyone's really going to play him. And I could just see that being one of them things. Like that Bailey dude today, I know eventually the White Sox did hit him a little bit, but he had like 6 Ks through like the first 5. He was chalked the other day. He was chalked, and he got roughed up. Nobody went back to that spot. So just a similar situation, I think, for the Berrios thing. The question is, do you even risk it when you have a DeGrom, when you have an Aaron Nola?
Yeah.
When you don't do you even do it?
It depends. It depends what the bats look like how much money we're going to have, and what's down here in value. But I do think that that's interesting. The White Sox, like if you look into their recent numbers, and that's mainly all I've been looking at. Like what have they done the last 14 days? What have they done the last 21 days? Last month? Like I feel like there's been so many changes with like the sticky stuff and young players coming up that like what teams did last year is basically irrelevant. And I don't have enough time to really look at too many things. So I'm like, what do I really like? And the recency stats show the White Sox offense starting to decline a little bit. Some of it's due to injuries. Today, the catcher went down with something, so he may not be in the lineup tomorrow, Grandal. So, taking a look at what the lineups look like before the slate started is kind of like a big part of this decision. But you've seen the White Sox with some young kids that we've never heard of, Jake Berger, Vaughn, Goodwin's batting cleanup for this team. I mean, this was the best-looking offensive lineup in baseball, give or take, when the season started. And they've been decimated right now. So I'm with that. At 8-8, you could do like a double mid-tier, put some more bats in. I do like that. I'm with that. I could definitely get behind that. And Rodon, like you use him in MME, but I'm kind of talking to you about this as like I'm building 3 to 5 lineups, and I like to use pitchers more than once. You know what I mean? Like, so it's only the ones that we really like. Ian Anderson against Pitt. My first thought is probably not. I think Pittsburgh's starting to like wake up slightly. Like they're not great, but they do have some young players that are actually pretty decent. They're scrappy. And I feel like they're actually starting to come around. Anderson doesn't have big-time strikeout upside. Pittsburgh doesn't strike out a ton, so I don't know what the ceiling is here. Castillo against the Royals, though, I could be into at that 8-5 double mid-tier kind of idea. I do think he was like way underperforming to start the year, and he's starting to round out. I feel like he's done this in the past a few times. Like he's a better pitcher in warm conditions. And the Royals lineup is at best. They don't strike out a ton, but an overpowering pitcher could get it going. And then you got Ohtani, coming off a terrible start where he couldn't get his control against the Yankees. Against Boston, who's also dealing with some injuries, on the road, bigger park. I think that's a guy worth thinking about. Maybe doesn't make the 3 to 5 man cut, but like for sure in GPPs or MME. And then as we kind of round out this like 7 to 8K range, I think Pablo Lopez is always like interesting, but not against the Dodgers. They don't strike out enough. Matt's against Baltimore. Johnny Cueto has been actually decent, and the Cardinals are just terrible. That's like a GP, like an MME guy for me. Down to like 7. I think John Gray against Arizona is something you could consider, but that Castillo, Berrios, maybe Ohtani is kind of what I'm looking at that I like.
Yeah, it definitely stands out, right? Ohtani, I mean, a horrible outing, as bad as it can get. And he's playing Boston. The matchup is, based off this year's numbers, even tougher, you could argue. But I think that because he was so bad and there's so many options on this slate that maybe his ownership is not as high as it should be.
Boston does have, like, sneakier, more strikeout upside than they have in the past.
Absolutely. They have a 24.
Guys like Hunter Renfroe.
Right. Yeah. Like, against righties, they have a 24.2% K rate on the season, which is high. That's high.
Yeah. That's
especially
very
for
high.
them.
Yeah.
I completely agree. But I like what you're saying about that double mid-tier action just to have a little bit of extra money without sacrificing upside. You're still taking pitchers with upside. One guy that the John Gray call I think is interesting. Arizona's been terrible this year. Especially the righties. This game is in Arizona. John Gray is only 7-3, and we don't have a lot of super cheap dudes that that I can stomach at this tier. The only other guy I can really see here, and I've been burnt by this guy all season, is Dane Dooning. And the last time that I played him, again, it was the same slate that you did the dirty on. He was pitching well.
He did all
Yeah,
right.
60
Yeah,
something pitches and they pulled him in 4 innings. Didn't let him go out there for the fifth. So that's a serious risk.
yeah.
That's obviously terrifying when you have a pitcher in that
And
situation.
honestly, the Tigers, like, they're just
Yeah,
scrappy as shit,
scrappy
man. It's
Coco.
crazy. Like, I've have minimal success attacking them with
Man,
pitchers
even
this year.
today, the Aller dude had 9 Ks, and then out of nowhere, they
Yeah,
erupted for 5 runs.
yeah.
It's fucking crazy. Fucking Tigers.
They do strike out a
Yeah,
ton, so you do have that like
yeah,
cushion, you know.
You hope for that floor of strikeouts before they do something dirty to you. But yeah,
Yep.
I'm with you, man. I don't see a whole else here. I think Gray and Dooning are the two cheapies, and then we touched on the mid tier guys. Any other pitchers you wanted to touch on, or should we move over to top offenses?
I will say that Houston Sheffield has a chance to get rocked by the Yankees tomorrow. They're really waking up from against lefties, and he used to play against them. This could be trouble.
Top ball. All right, let's go into them top offenses, man. You talked about the Yankees. What are some of the other offenses that stand out to you?
Yeah, so the Yankees, almost like Castillo, like they just kind of do. Like they have not done well all season long. You get sporadic moments from a couple players, but as a whole, I think offensively, you got to look at the season as like a disappointment so far. But there's nothing's changed here, so like they should regress positively against left-handed pitching. I mean, they're so right-handed power dominant. And guys like Sheffield who don't miss bats much, that like lines up as a good situation for them to get right. So, guys like Judge, Sanchez, LeMahieu, Stanton, Luke Voigt, Urshela, like take your pick. I always roll with Judge. I just think he's got like the capability to go nuclear, but so does Sanchez, Stanton, like, a lot of these guys. I'm definitely interested in the Yankee stack tomorrow, for sure. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I was gonna ask you, you're a Yankee fan. What is it like? This is the same group of guys. Like Gleyber Torres having like the worst season of his young. Like, what's going
Yeah.
on?
Well,
What do you think this
we
is?
like didn't want to give him up for
I
the
know,
Grom a few years ago.
I know, it's crazy. What do you think it is though?
I don't know. I think it's just like a short, small sample, and that like they could wake up and do pretty well. Like Gary Sanchez seems to be kind of heating up. Aaron Judge, yeah, I think, is on the verge of like a breakout. Stanton can go from like ice cold to red hot really quickly. They did deal with injuries.
That's Stanton's biggest problem. The minute he gets hot, after like the fifth or sixth game, he gets hurt.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know. I've been meaning to ask you about that. Obviously, we don't get a chance to talk about
I think it's just like not a good enough mix. Like it's too much power, so they're so boom bust, and like a lot of solo home runs doesn't do nothing. You need that mix. Like last year, LeMahieu was such an on base machine. He like almost won the batting crown if he didn't. And like Aaron Judge was such a high on base percentage guy. If he wasn't homering, he was getting on base. And in years past, like that would put pressure on the pitchers against the big boppers. This year, it's like all home run or nothing. And when the guys are like kind of collectively cold, it can really be a pretty ugly and painful. But I really don't think it's like real. I mean, these guys have such long sample sizes of dominance.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. Yeah. I feel you on that.
So, who else we got out here, though? We got, some young pitcher in Rodriguez against the Padres. Jeffrey, is this kid who doesn't miss bats and never really has done well? Is this Pudge's kid?
Who?
The pitcher for the Nationals, Jeffrey Rodriguez.
Oh, I don't know. I don't even have him on the sheet.
He's on the DraftKings player pool as the pitcher. He's pitched the last like three. He's pitched 3 times: 6-12 against San Fran, 6-25 against the Marlins, and 7-2 against the Dodgers. Making his first appearance in 2021. Yeah, I think this is him. I think this is the kid. This is Pudge Rodriguez's kid. He's made multiple like stints and just really never impressed enough to stay up against the Padres, who are just deadly. And you got Machado waking up now, which just makes that lineup that much more deadly. Like he really was kind of cold, and Tatis and other guys were just like overshadowing it. But if he gets hot too, oof, that lineup is hard to deal with. Um, Toronto Blue Jays, what a lineup against Baltimore and this Dean Creamer kid who no one believes is really very good. All those like the top line, the top hitting offenses are all kind of interesting. We'll see what the weather's like. Do you have any idea what the weather's going to be like in Cubs?
I could probably look. Yeah, I could look up, get a guesstimation. Matter of fact, I got it right here. It says 10-mile-an-hour winds blowing out to center, 84 degrees, about 60% humidity. So it should be another good hitting environment ish.
Okay. Yeah, I mean that makes sense. We do have like tropical storms kind of coming around my area of the country, so usually that produces rain for the rest of the country and like wind and stuff like that. And who's pitching for Philly? We got
Nola.
Arrieta. So I don't like
Nola against Arrieta.
Arrieta. That's kind of interesting. Cubs bats again. Philly bats against
Arrieta. Sucks.
Yeah, he's terrible, and they got a couple guys who hit the sinker ball well. Like Adabel Herrera is a good sinker ball hitter, and so's
Bryce the 5'9"
from Washington. Yeah, Bryce the 5'9". Yeah. Bryce the 5'9".
Does it make sense? No, well, it makes no sense, but it sounds good. Perfect.
So that could be interesting with like, a full slate. They weren't even really that popular tonight, especially the Philly side. I believe the Cubs bullpen's, kind of trash too, right? So if you get through that, it continues to stay good. Ray Almudo's really cheap, like under 4K cheap. That's very rare for him, so that makes the stack even like easier. You grab a guy like Herrera, who's most likely leading off at 3-4. It's not even expensive, If you put Briss, who I would recommend, Briss, Bryce, Herrera, Ray Almudo, that's 4. I think those guys would make, like, if I was hand building a team, and then whoever you want for the 5th. That's not even expensive, You might be able to fit the ground with that, You catch the wind out when it hits, usually really good. So that's kind of interesting. San Fran's been so good offensively. I don't think Wainwright is anything to really write home about. Depending who's in the lineup for the Giants, because they are dealing with some injuries, that could be like a sneaky, secondary stack. And honestly, like, I've not been married to the 5-man anymore. Like, I'm big slates though. I don't know, maybe, but I don't mind doing a 4-3-1. Getting multiple pieces of 3 teams on a big slate. So the Giants could be interesting as like a secondary to me. And then I'm just going to keep rocking with Texas. I think that they're kind of hot. They did terrible today, but, one day doesn't change a hot streak. Urena doesn't miss bats. You could see guys like Gallo and Adalis Garcia and David Dahl's back in the lineup for really cheap. Go for a couple home runs. I think that's kind of interesting for a cheap stack, too, and very, very low owned.
Yeah, man, as of right now, I'm really into the Yankees, like you talked about, especially looking at some of their prices, right? They kind of help. They have their own glue players to help you get Judge and these other guys, and maybe even be able to afford a DeGrom. The Philly side, same story. Eugene Segura was extremely popular today. His ownership may drop a little bit because of just how many other options there are. It's just a massive slate. So I like that Philly thing that we talked about. Shit, I literally just forgot the third team that I had in my that's because we didn't talk about them yet. The Rangers. The Rangers are that team. I played the Rangers today. They were awful. They were terrible. Willie Peralta destroyed them.
Oh, wow. Philly went off for 10 runs.
Oh, they did? They ended up doing
tonight,
it? Wow.
Yeah.
Well, maybe the ownership will be a little higher then. But yeah, I like the Rangers against Urena. One of the biggest issue with the Rangers, like you mentioned, they strike out a lot. Well, against Jose Urena, that's not really a thing you have to worry about too much with his 15% K rate. So those 3 teams I like a lot. Where I'm like thinking like, do I go on, where I think a little further into things, then I'm looking into like Baltimore, right? Baltimore's at home in a great hitter's park against Steven Matz, who's had a good year. Didn't look so great in his last start. He's coming back from an injury. And Baltimore, believe it or not, is fourth in WRC plus against lefties at 110.
Yeah.
They have a 332 WOBA, only a 21.9% K rate. They only have a 164 ISO, but you got to consider guys like Trey Mancini, even like for value, the Pedro Severino. Maikel Franco, if he plays, I know he's been dealing with an injury. If he plays, he's got plenty of history against Steven Matz from the days with the Mets, and he played for Philly for all those years. So those are like the like that's like a lingering offense in the back of my mind. But obviously, there's a lot of options. But I really like those three you pointed out. I wasn't even really looking at the Yankees too hard, but now that you pointed out, man, it's in Seattle. Like, you know me, I always love taking late games and sweating late and have something to. And they're in a.
It's got upside. Like, they could easily go for 5-6 home runs. Like, and the Seattle bullpen's terrible. Like, I've really bullpens have in my DFS career have steadily risen in importance, and right now they're top three things I'm looking at when considering. A terrible bullpen is such a beautiful thing to attack, and really it's the gift that keeps on giving.
I 100% agree.
I get behind that for sure. And honestly, I have an affinity for the Seattle offense. I don't believe in this Tyon kid very much for the Yankees. Now, the Yankees bullpen's pretty decent, but it depends which pen you get. Is it a close game? Is it a blowout? They also have some not so great arms out there. Seattle's got some guys especially when you're trying to make guys fit. If you're trying to jam with DeGrom in a Seattle stack with Crawford leading off under 4K, a Kyle Seager who can hit a home run off a Tyon any day of the week. This guy, Jake Fraley, is legit, and the world hasn't figured that out yet. So he's extremely cheap. He can certainly hit a home run off Tyon. Mitch Haniger's been murdering the ball all year. I would say he's in the top 10 MVP discussion this year. And then you got a guy like Ty France, Dylan Moore, a cheap catcher, whatever you want. Shed Long is super cheap, and he's always doing a little something. You could try out a Jake Bowers for probably min price. Throw in a DeGrom and still have room for 3 or 4 guys from an expensive stack. So Seattle's kind of interesting to me as well. More of a MME, but I might sneak 2 or 3 of them into a lineup tomorrow.
Yeah, one other spot, and this isn't even really like the time. We'd have to look into this more, but spots that I always think are interesting are when a good team plays a pretty good pitcher, a decent pitcher, and people don't want to fuck, but it's a really good
especially with a bad
ball. Yeah, right.
Sure.
Perfect example. Well, that's actually a great point, because I think that Houston is kind of in that spot. Now I will say that Houston's banged up. Brantley's got a Q tag. They got
Oakland's pen.
Yeah, Oakland's pen is garbage, and Paulie knows.
Chris Bassett's really not legit either. Yeah. But Houston's been hurt. It really we got to see Houston's lineup.
That comes down to we got to see that lineup. They've already been missing Bregman. Yeah. That's one thing. We're talking about Brantley.
And the big dog's out. The lefty, the masher.
Jordan Alvarez. Dude, seems to be
I don't do a stack
always fucking hurt. So we need to see the lineup. But just for game theory purposes, that's always something interesting, right? If a good pitcher's playing a good team, and there's a chance, and Houston's one of the better teams to do it with because their strikeout rate is so low when they're healthy, to be clear. But just wanted to point it out. But right now, I really like those offenses that we already discussed. Let's get into things to watch. Is there anything that you're kind of on the fence about, that you're looking at this and you're that could go either way?
That could go either way is I was gonna say Baltimore. To me, I like them a lot. For DFS, I think Cedric Mullins is awesome, and they're always super cheap. They play in a hitter's ballpark, so I use them quite a bit. And when they suck, it is just painful. You described it to me when we were talking about the Cardinals the other day. You were it's so painful when they do nothing for you because you knew it was coming. So with Baltimore, I'm on the fence because he's got super low floor, super high ceiling. You don't know which Matz is going to show up. And then Baltimore can, do either. And Toronto bullpen's a little improved, so that one I'm a little on the fence with. And then the Reds, bats, to me, are kind of interesting. They've got a ton of righty power. This kid, Chris Bubik, doesn't miss a ton of bats. It looks like it's going to be a hot, humid environment, which is really good in KC. They are kind of interesting, but I could see them just doing nothing also. And, Aquino, Suarez, Castellanos. I like throwing in the lefty on lefty. Jesse Winker, I think, is like an elite hitter. Like that's a stack that's not going to be super cheap, and like when that does for you, you're like, ah. But those two, I'd say
All day. I can feel it. I realize now I should have saved. I'm just doing this show solo. I should have saved some of these guys I asked you about for this. Like Baltimore would have been a perfect place for this. It would have been a perfect place for me to put Jose Barrios. That conversation we had right here in this segment here. You know, I'll be prepared the next time. It's all goody. But
segment sushi.
That's it. I got another one though. Eovaldi, I think you can classify in that category, right? Like one way or another. You feel like something's gonna happen there. Like this Boston LA series just seems to have really high totals again. Like yesterday they did, today they did. So it's like you feel like something's gonna happen there. Either the Angels, and especially when you look at the Angels, bro. Like how are they playing so well? Like they got Ohtani and Walsh. After that, you look at the guys that they're playing with, like that Ward dude, David Fletcher, like Juan Lagares. Like what is going on? And they've crept up. They got one of the highest WRC pluses in the league against lefties, and that was well after Trout got hurt. So what the fuck is gonna be? But you feel like that's not gonna last, right?
I know. And Rendon, they just got back, and then he left today
got hurt again
or something. You know, I
30's
don't know.
will be done.
Like to me, that's just like Eovaldi is not attractive on the slate because there's not enough strikeouts there, and I expect him to give up some runs. You know, even against that shitty lineup.
That's what he does.
But Ohtani, like the Angels bullpen's crappy, right? Like if Boston were to get to Ohtani, had the control issues again, then it could be like,
massive.
You know,
a perfect example, right? Really good team against a good pitcher with a terrible bullpen behind him. Yeah.
You always get those very low from too, which makes them more.
And don't forget, me and Paulie, we talk about the bullpens. I agree with you completely on the bullpen, man. Like that's become almost more important to me than the starter at times, right? Yeah. Like especially it could be like really help you if you're stuck between two spots. I'm always going with the worst bullpen behind it, you know, all day. Bullpen, and we have bullpen stats available at WiseTake.com if you're a member of the WiseTake Nation. We're gonna do some Dong Watch at this point, and then we're pretty much done here. Before we do the Dong Watch, though, I want to remind everybody, if you haven't already, hit the like button. Please hit the like button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Covering MLB for free Sunday night through Thursday night, covering slates from Monday through Friday. So make sure you are subscribed, notifications bell turned on, don't miss out. Continue to leave your comments, continue to share the show as much as possible. Hit Paulie up on Twitter at Paulie with 8 D's. That's Paulie DD. To be clear. And you can find me on Twitter at CK_01tree. That being said, Paul, let's go ahead and get into some Dong Watch action. Who's going deep?
Man, I'm going to say that both Adolis Garcia and Joey Gallo go deep tomorrow.
Okay, 2-for-1 special. I like it. I'll go with Trey Mancini against Mr. Matz there. And I'll go Trey Mancini. And let's get. You got me really intrigued with that Ohtani situation. I'm not gonna pick a Dong Watch guy because I had to decide. I guess it would be Devers, but I think what I'll do instead is go with man. I wanted to get fancy and go with a Houston player, but I don't know who the fuck's playing, so I can't do that either. We'll keep it simple. I'll go with Pete Alonso. I'll just go back to my homerism. Against a lefty at home at Citi Field, Brett Anderson. I'll go Pete Alonso.
Yeah, he might be.
Yeah, it seems like
I like that. I like that. I do. Man, there's a lot of good home run spots tomorrow.
Yeah, and I can't pick one.
I'm gonna take Audubel Herrera. Yeah. Go homer on tomorrow off Jake Arrieta with the wind aided thing down. He just homered tonight. I see it happening again.
I like it. I'll go with give me some Gio Urshela. I'll go with some Gio. Let's go Gio. I think no matter what happens, he's almost always long. He's the one Yankee that people just don't like to play. They'll play.
He's the one I always
right. Because at third base, there's so many good people. You don't want you're like this guy batting like seventh, But I mean, he's one of the better hitters against lefties. At least so far this season. They should be all fucking good against lefties. It should be take your pick, but hopefully they wake up at some point. And that's going to do it, Nation, for this edition of the MLB Wise Stream. Paulie, I appreciate you, man, coming on here. Definitely, listen, man, these years we've been doing this, it's been a grind, it's been a blast, and it's moments like what you had the other day that make it all worth it in the end. That and the people that watch and support, we had a really cool comment in the chat talking about Our boy Hingo Ace had been watching for over 3.5 years. Still here. See a lot of guys who seem to copy what you guys been doing. But you know what? At the end of the day, it just is what it is. It's just that's business, man. People are gonna try. They could try, but there's only one nation that fucking matters, and that is the WiseTake Nation. Paulie, anything in closing before we get up out of here?
No, man, it was good to be back, and it's been a long grind. It's nice to have some success, and I think it just kind of like validates to the guys that have rocked with us for a long time. Like, just keep at it, man. The good smash is coming, and hopefully sooner than later.
All day. For Paulie D, for myself, the entire WiseTake Nation, as always, good luck.
Yeah.